Good morning, my name is Randall Rader. I'm from Public Works Stormwater Drainage, and this morning we're out here to do a demonstration, a walk around of the Gradall model number 660 Echo. What's unique about this, you need to ensure you do have a minimum of a Class B CDL. This is a Class B vehicle with air brakes. And secondly, this is a manual transmission. It's a 10-speed, 5 low and 5 high. So you also need to ensure that you know how to drive a manual transmission. All right, with that, let's get started on our walk around. All right, for the purpose of this demonstration, for your full walk around, you need to ensure that you refer to the video for the Class B dump truck inspection. We're gonna go through the specifics of just the Gradall model 660 Echo, showing fluids, showing the operation, and some of the different specifics. So first thing we're gonna move to is the front engine compartment. All right, two things we're looking at up here. This is gonna be your engine compartment. Obviously, pull out on the handle, it lifts straight up. All right, within the engine compartment, a couple things we're checking. Obviously, our radiator and our coolant. Again, because we've been driving this vehicle, this is hot, so do not open it when it's hot. Check your standard hoses, looking for leaks, any excessive dry rot. You're checking your belts, your alternator, looking for burnt and frayed wiring. Everything is similar is on a vehicle inspection of a Class B CDL vehicle. What we're looking at here, our oil dipstick is right here. And then on the back, we have another fluid tank that we would check the level on, and also looking at our hoses. All right, and then closing this, I'm moving to our battery compartment, which is inset right here on the deck. All right, very simple. Obviously, just put your finger in, pull it up, watch your mirrors. You should have at least 2 batteries inside. You just want to obviously check for corrosion, check for your connectivity. All right, once you check those, go ahead and close that up, and we're going to move around to the fuel tank on the bottom side here. Located on the passenger side front, this is the fuel tank for the front engine. This model does have 2 separate engines, one for driving and one for digging. So with your fuel tank, obviously you want to look at your hoses. You want to make sure it's positively mounted. You're looking underneath for any apparent leaks, and you're looking at the tank itself for any dings, dents, damage, anything else. All right, behind your fuel tank, you have your exhaust system. You would get underneath. What we're checking on the exhaust system is to make sure that it's positively mounted to the frame. We're also looking for any leaks. If you see any black soot, that could be an indication that you might have a leak on your exhaust system. Because it does require crawling and climbing onto this vehicle, we're going to check our steps and our handles, making sure all of our handles are positively mounted, no damage to them. Looking at our steps as well, making sure we have sufficient tread and that it's mounted to the vehicle. Just like on your, again, your Class B vehicle inspection, on your tires, we're looking at least 4 32 of an inch tread across the tire. We're looking at our sidewalls, looking for excessive dry rot, looking for any bulges, any foreign matter lodged into the tire. Looking at our rim, both on the outside, and we'd move and look on the inside for dings, dents, cracks, non-factory welds, or any apparent damage. Looking at all of our lug nuts, making sure they're all in place and tight. Our front hub seals, making sure all the bolts are in and that there's no leakage. And lastly, I would check the air pressure of each individual tire according to manufacturer specifications. All right, on the rear tires, again, inspecting the same way. We would check both tires, inner and outer, looking at your tread, a minimum of 2 32-inch tread now. Again, looking for any foreign matter, looking at the tire sidewalls for any foreign matter, any bulges, cuts. Again, moving, you have both rims, your inner rim and outer rim, both sides now, and you have your inner spacer. So you're checking your spacing, making sure there's nothing lodged in the spacing. Looking at the rim, making sure there's no dings, dents, cracks. Looking at your nuts on your hub seal and your lug nuts to ensure that they're not loose or any missing. And lastly, you would check the air pressure for both your outer and your inner tire on the valve stem and check it in accordance with the manufacturer specifications. As you're climbing up, you want to ensure, again, your 3 points of connection. You always have to have 2 hands or 2 feet on this vehicle at all times. As we're moving up top, we're going to check our hydraulic fluid. You have your sight glass, hot, cold, low. Right now we would be at the cold because the rear engine has not been running. So we would look at the cold sight glass, which shows that it is sufficient. If it needed to be filled, you have your fill tanks up top as well. All right, on to the rear. We can open up both of our engine compartments. All right, inside here is our rear engine for the digging operation. First, we're going to look at any lines, look for apparent leaks or any damage. Moving over to this side, all right, we're going to check the engine oil for the rear engine. Dipstick is located right here, and then your oil fill is also located right here. When we move up top, we're going to check the coolant level for the engine from the top side, and we'll inspect that in a little bit. Other than that, I'm just checking all my hoses and my fittings, making sure there's no apparent leaks, making sure the hoses do not have any bulge or excessive dry rot on them. All right, down underneath, you have all your lights. Obviously your parking lights, your regular brake lights, and then your reverse lights. You have them on both sides. Like on a Class B inspection of a vehicle, you're checking the lights for cleanliness and clarity, making sure they're positively mounted to the vehicle. And then you're making sure there's no signs of damage or condensation, which would show a leak. We also have 3 inner lights, same thing, parking lights, checking our license plate as well. And then we have a rear backup alarm attached that you're just making sure is mounted now. We'll check it later when we check the reverse operations. All right, on the driver's side now, we're going to check our air tanks. Primary and secondary tank, looking at the lines, making sure there's no damage to the lines, looking at the points of the hose connections, making sure there's no apparent leaks, checking the tanks themselves, making sure there's no damage to the tanks, dings, dents, cracks, any non-factory welds, looking at the straps, ensuring that the tanks are positively mounted to the vehicle. And also on the bottom of each tank, you have your release. You'd open and close to make sure that there's no foreign matter, any liquids, waters, or oils, anything. That's where you would drain them out at. Now I'm going to move up to the top and check show you where the fuel tank and check the rear coolant level as well. All right, up on top here, we have a flap, and it's just your basic for your radiator, your coolant. Obviously the system is hot right now. I would not open it. You'd want to check this when it's cold, but this is where you would check it and also fill. And then for your rear tank, you have your tank I'm standing on, obviously. This is your cover, and this is where your fuel would go right inside here. All right, there is a gauge internal of the cab for the front tank and internal of the back digging cab for the tank here. So you need to ensure that you make sure before they're going out, they're both at sufficient levels. While I'm up here, I'm just gonna give my hoses a quick once over, looking at all the hose points of connection, making sure they're not damaged, they're not leaking, making sure the hoses aren't excessively dry rotted or any apparent damage on any of the hoses in any of the area for the rear boom digging operation. Also checking my cylinders and the piston rods, looking for any apparent damage, anything that's bent or any apparent leaks. All right, while you're walking and checking everything and keeping a good grasp, holding on, make sure you look at your warning placards. The one here says prevent injury, keep out of boom holes. That would be these holes located here, and then the internal holes, because if you do get something lodged in there, that inner boom does extend out. You don't want to get anything in there, especially any body part or anything like that. I had 2 other warning placards we're going to talk about real quick. On the back side of the cab, you have a warning, keep clear of machine swing area. Machine has a very wide swing area, which you'll see when we operate here in a little bit. You need to ensure that there's nothing in that swing area, personnel, vehicles, any debris or anything. You'd probably want to even cone your area off or have safety observers. And then you also have one by your stairs, warning, use 2 hands when climbing on machine. Talking about your 3 points of connection, either your 2 hands and 1 foot or your 2 feet and 1 hand while opening the door. All right, exactly on the same as on your Class B vehicle. You're gonna check your windows, looking for cleanliness, clarity, making sure they're not damaged or broken. You're also gonna check your mirrors on both sides of the vehicle, looking to make sure that there's no damage to them, that they're positively mounted, looking for cleanliness and clarity as well. Once we get inside the cab, we'll check our mirrors to make sure we can see out of them. All right, so crawling into the vehicle, first thing we need to ensure, this is kind of a bumpy ride. Make sure you have that seatbelt on at all times. All right, now that I'm in, I'm checking my mirrors, making sure that my mirrors are properly set for where I need them to be. Coming and checking my steering wheel, making sure there's no damage to the steering wheel. I'm also checking the play in the steering, making sure it's no more than 10 degrees or 2 inches of play. Lastly, I'm gonna check my horn. All right, now that we're in cab of the driving section, the front cab control, I'm gonna go through the basic dash controls here. Up on the left here, you see we have our temperature control. You pull this out, it's gonna give you heat, push it in, it's gonna be normal temperature. We have our heater is either off in the center, low or high, and then defrost is either off or on. Down below that, you have what's called your digging brake, which we will go through here in a couple minutes when we go through switching controls from the front to the rear. You also have your parking brake. Obviously pulled out is engaged, pushed in is disengaged. We have our oil pressure gauge, our battery gauge, our water temperature gauge, obviously our ignition, your speedometer and odometer, your hour indicator for the front engine. The blue light you see is obviously for your bright headlights. When it's illuminated, it means your bright headlights are on. I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then over here you have your primary and your secondary air tank gauges. With below that you have your washer wipers. To the right of that you have your low air indicator light. Once that illuminates, you know you are at low air. You have your fuel tank indicator gauge for the front. And then you have what's called the inner axle differential and an axle differential lock and unlock. For normal operations, you leave them in the unlock position. If you were to get stuck or hung up and need some extra power, need all your axles, all your tires spinning, that's where you'd go and lock them in. All right, on the right side of our steering wheel, you see the little red knob. That is your four-way hazards. You push in to engage the hazards. You pull out to turn them off. On the left side, you have obviously your turn signal, down for the left, up for the right, and then you have your green light indicator letting you know that it is on. On the floorboard, the little knob on the floorboard most people probably are not familiar with here. That is to turn your high beams and your low beams. All right, so you step on it once, that would go to high. Step on it again, that would be your low. All right, on the left side here, your clutch. This is your brake pedal and your gas pedal. This vehicle, as I stated earlier, is a 10-speed manual transmission. There is a diagram right here that tells you where each gear is. If you notice, it says 1/6, 2/7, 3/8, 4/9, and 5/10. It's called a 10-speed, but it's 5 high, 5 low. All right, so on our shifter, you notice there is a little black switch here. When it's in the down position, you're in your 5 low gears, 1 through 5. Once you hit 5th, you flip that up, and that would put you in 6th through 10th. All right, so that is very important to remember there. Down is low and up is high. All right, also now, switching this vehicle from front controls to rear controls. There is a placard located on the door, right about here. It's called the Remote Control Engagement Procedure. All right, it has your 6 steps, but we're gonna go through those. First thing you need to do, start the vehicle. All right, with the vehicle running, you're gonna check your air pressure on your gauges. You wanna ensure it's anywhere from 100 to 120 PSI. All right, once you're there, you are now going to put your vehicle into gear. It's recommended anywhere from 1st to 3rd, depending on your level of knowledge and comfortability. All right, now you're gonna turn the vehicle off. Take your foot off the clutch. Now you engage the digging brake. All right, When you flip the digging brake, ensure your foot or nothing is near the clutch because it will pull it to the floor. As you see, it is now all the way to the floor. And lastly, you have to release your air brakes and flip this little blue switch on the control from rear to the front. All right, now I'm going to go through how to switch your remote driving control from the front cab to the rear cab. All right, on the door here, you see a nice diagram or a nice step-by-step how to do this. All right, I'm going to go through this. So with the vehicle started, obviously push the clutch in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take the vehicle out of gear for a minute. My parking brake is already engaged, pulled out. I'm checking my PSI on my primary and secondary gauge. I want to make sure it's at least to 100 to 125 PSI. So I'm going to let that build up for just 1 second. All right, I'm at about 120 PSI now. My cutout just kicked in. So from that point, I'm going to go ahead and place my transmission. I operate usually in second gear, so you make sure your hand switch is down. All right, and you're gonna go straight up into second gear and make sure that it's actually in gear. All right, from that point, now that it's in gear, I'm gonna turn the engine off. All right, take my foot off the clutch. Now I'm gonna engage with the digging brake. All right, make sure you keep your foot clear of the clutch. So I'm gonna turn that on. The digging brake pulls in. And next thing I'm gonna do is just release my parking brake by pushing it in. Pull your keys out, take them with you, unbuckle your seatbelt, and now we'll move to the rear. All right, so climbing into the rear again, we have another warning sign here. Use 2 hands when climbing into machine. So now you swing yourself in. All right, and you're gonna get situated. Now we're gonna discuss the controls in the rear cab here. We have our oil pressure for the rear engine, our water temperature, our battery level, fuel level, and here's our hour meter. Of course, our ignition. Over on the left, you're gonna see your climate control, heater high, off, or low. Defroster is either on or off. All right, down in the center is gonna be some of your controls. You have your 2 joysticks, your left and your right, and then cleverly in the middle there, you have a joystick button, your on-off. For operation, you want to make sure it's on. Anytime you're not operating, you're driving, you want to make sure that is turned off. On the front here, you see a pictorial diagram that shows you what each control does, as well as another warning. Always operate engine at full throttle to keep cylinders full of oil to prevent unexpected machine movements. What it's talking about is full throttle from the rear. On your side here, you have your emergency brake, normal or emergency. You have your air pressure tank indicator, and you also have your throttle. Your throttle control, down is throttle down. To throttle it up, you actually push the button in and pull up all the way, which increases your throttle. Push it in, back down. Lastly, you have 2 foot pedals. The right foot pedal that moves right to left is for, these are used for steering from the rear cab. This is to turn your wheels right and left. The left foot pedal is to go forward and then move in reverse, which we'll show in just a second from the outside. Also, on the side wall over here, you have your Gradall G660 Echo hydraulic remote operating controls. So there is a diagram that shows what everything does inside this cab. That part all over. All right, now that I have the vehicle started up from the rear cab, I'm gonna throttle it up. And I'm gonna show the forward and reverse driving operation from the rear. So I push my left pedal forward. You see the vehicle will go forward from the rear. And again, before you move backwards, you need to actually check and make sure there's nothing around you behind you. This is where a good ground man spotter would come into play. All right, the spotter says I'm clear, so I'd move to reverse. Turning, I use my right pedal. You can see the the front wheels turn to the right, also to the left. All right, obviously it would be good if I'm back here and I'm moving some debris and I need to pull up, we'll pull to the right. All right, so from that point now, I'm going to show you the basic controls of operating this, this piece of machinery. All right, now that my safety observer says I am clear all the way around, I'm going to show you the basic hand controls here. All right, my left hand control, I pull back towards me, and it's going to raise my boom up. Obviously, I push forward, and that's going to put my boom down. Right now, I got it out of the cradle, and I'm going to show the 360 operation of this piece of machinery. All right, I take my right handle, my left handle, and I move it to the right, and I can spin all the way around for if I'm using digging operation from the passenger side or to move debris. I can also operate from the rear, and I can also, you see, move and operate from the driver's side as well. All right, so from here I'm going to move back to the passenger side. All right, I'm going to slightly take my boom down. All right, so now I take my right hand control and I push it forward, and you see that extends the boom out. And then pulling it towards me brings the boom back in. Goes back to the warning to prevent injury, keep out of the boom holes. All right, now my right hand is going to control the bucket. I move it to the left, it pulls the bucket down. To the right is going to move it up. All right, this also has a, you can dig at an angle or pull stuff at an angle. Use that. There's a button on top of the right joystick. To the left, it obviously rotates it left. To the right is going to rotate it right. Lastly, it's equipped with a horn. Your left joystick, you hit the button and you have a very, very faint horn sound. All right, so now moving back into the cradle. Need to make sure it's centered down into the cradle itself. All right, make sure your bucket is all the way open. And when we set this, we usually set this about the 5th hole, leaving 3 on the outside, and we're gonna look about the 5th hole on the boom. The reason for this is when you're driving, it gives you the best field of view. Also, if that hydraulic pressure does leak down when it's parked, the bucket will not come down and hit that front glass. So now I'm gonna throttle down, turn my joystick controls off, and I would go ahead and turn my rear engine off. All right, now that you're done with the reverse cab operations and you need to switch your controls back to the front, everything is in reverse. You get back in the vehicle, go with your blue switch to the rear, move over, engage your parking brake, and now you flip your digging brake from on to off, and you see your clutch pedal come out back into where it can be used. All right, and that concludes the controls, how to switch from the rear digging operation to the front. So this concludes our brief orientation and overview of the Gradall Model 660 Echo. Couple things to remember, because you are climbing and moving onto a raised platform, proper PPE, hard hat required. Always using the 3 points of connection when you're moving up and down the platforms. Also remember, this is a Class B vehicle, so you need to have at a minimum a Class B commercial driver's license, and you also have to have the know-how of how to drive a manual transmission, being that this is a 10-speed, 5 high, 5 low manual transmission. So again, refer to the Class B vehicle dump truck inspection for the CDL portion of this, and I thank you and have a good day.